The air around the Navy SEALs training base was thick with sweat, exhaustion, and the sound of boots pounding against the gravel. Among the recruits, one figure stood out not because she was stronger or louder, but because she was different. Her name was Lieutenant Sarah Collins, and unlike the others, she carried herself with a quiet resilience that the men mistook for weakness. What drew the most ridicule wasn't her speed, her size, or even her rank. It was the tattoo inked on her forearm, an eagle clutching a trident, a symbol that looked too bold, too proud, for someone they thought hadn't yet earned it. Quick pause. Comment where you're watching from, and if you love these stories, hit subscribe now. The next one will blow your mind, and it's even crazier. The tattoo was mocked endlessly. Some of the SEALs laughed and called it a tourist's version of the trident. Others whispered that she had gotten it to pretend like she belonged in a world that was reserved for the toughest men alive. Sarah didn't flinch when they mocked her. She didn't rise to the bait or lash out. She simply tightened her jaw, rolled down her sleeve, and kept moving forward. What no one knew, at least not yet, was that the tattoo was not random. It was the exact mark carried by her late father, Master Chief Chris Collins, a legendary SEAL sniper who had fought alongside the likes of Chris Kyle and Marcus Luttrell. He had passed down his lessons in silence, in late-night training sessions, in words that carried more weight than bullets. When he died in combat, Sarah had the tattoo etched on her skin as a promise that his legacy would not end with him. The weeks dragged on, training, grinding every recruit into exhaustion. Sarah stayed quiet, learning, adapting, enduring. But the more she held back, the louder the mockery grew. The men thought she was fragile, a mistake in the ranks, someone who'd crumble in real battle. Yet the commander watched her closely. There was something about the way she moved, something precise in her every step, that hinted she was not what the others believed. The truth revealed itself when the training became reality. One night, the call came in. A team was needed for an urgent mission in hostile territory overseas. A high-value target had been identified, guarded by insurgents in a village bristling with weapons. The squad, including Sarah, was deployed under the cover of darkness. From the moment their boots hit the dirt, tension crackled in the air. The night was thick, shadows moving where they shouldn't. Sarah clutched her M4 rifle, eyes scanning, every muscle coiled with focus. The SEALs advanced, but within minutes, the quiet turned deadly. Gunfire ripped through the silence. Bullets sparked against walls. The ambush had been set long before they arrived. Chaos exploded. The team scattered for cover, pinned down on all sides. Radios crackled with panicked shouts. The men who once mocked Sarah now fought for their lives, their confidence eroded by the sheer numbers swarming them. Smoke and dust filled the air. A soldier fell wounded and unable to move. That was when Sarah moved. Calmly, deliberately, she crawled through the dirt toward higher ground, the tattoo on her arm glinting under the moonlight. She reached into her pack and pulled out a scope, attaching it to her rifle with practiced hands. Every sound around her seemed to fade. Her breathing slowed, and in that instant, she wasn't the recruit being mocked anymore. She was the daughter of a master sniper, and the battlefield was where her bloodline belonged. Through her scope, she locked onto the first insurgent. One pull of the trigger, and he dropped. She shifted quickly. Another shot. Another hostile down. Her rhythm was flawless, like she had been preparing for this moment her entire life. The SEALs looked up from their cover, stunned. The woman they dismissed was now systematically dismantling the ambush with surgical precision. Minutes stretched like hours. Every time an enemy tried to flank them, Sarah was there. Every time a squad mate stumbled, she covered their advance. The team, rallied behind her courage, moving forward under the shield of her accuracy. The mocking voices had gone silent, replaced by a growing realization. Without her, none of them would be leaving this battlefield alive. At the climax of the firefight, an RPG streaked out from the rooftops, aimed directly at their position. Sarah spotted it just in time. She didn't hesitate. Rolling into position, she fired a perfect shot that dropped the man before he could launch again. Dust exploded in the distance, screams echoing, but the tide had turned. The ambush broke. The insurgents fled. The SEALs survived. When the last shot faded into silence, the men looked at Sarah as though seeing her for the first time. Her uniform was torn, her face streaked with grime, but her eyes burned with the same fierce calm her father once had. They made it back to base alive because of her, and though no one said it yet, every one of them knew they owed her everything. The next morning, the squad stood before the commander for debrief. Sarah stood at attention, silent, her tattoo visible where her sleeve had rolled up. The commander's gaze fixed on it. His eyes narrowed, then softened, recognition dawning. He stepped forward slowly, the room silent, every man watching. Then, with deliberate precision, the commander raised his hand and saluted her. The SEALs froze. Jaws tightened. No one moved. For the first time, silence fell heavy in the room, not of mockery, but of respect. Every soldier there understood. That tattoo was not decoration. It was not a boast. It was a legacy. The daughter of Master Chief Chris Collins had just proven she carried his blood, his courage, his will to fight. And in that moment, the mocking that once echoed through the barracks vanished forever. What replaced it was something far more powerful, the unspoken truth that Sarah Collins had carved her place among them with fire, steel, and unshakable bravery. From then on, whenever the men looked at her, they didn't see just a recruit. They saw the soldier who had stood against death and carried them through it. They saw the tattoo not as a mark of arrogance, but as a symbol of honor, one the commander himself had saluted. And no one ever doubted her again. The desert night was cold, sharp winds cutting through the silence as a team of Navy SEALs prepared for their mission. The objective was simple on paper but lethal in practice: infiltrate a fortified compound deep in hostile territory, secure intelligence, and extract without casualties. Among the squad stood Captain Emily Hawthorne, the only woman on the operation, her eyes steady beneath the night vision goggles strapped to her helmet. She was British-American, a transfer officer with combat history few knew about. The others hadn't taken long to notice the tattoo on her right arm. Inked just below the sleeve of her fatigues, it showed a dagger crossed with wings, bold and unapologetic. The mocking came quietly at first, a few chuckles when she stretched during drills, then louder when the tension of deployment mounted. "Nice tattoo," one of the SEALs had laughed. "Looks like you just wanted something scary for the gym." Emily never explained it. She didn't snap back, didn't defend herself. She simply adjusted her gear, kept her voice steady, and moved on. The men mistook her silence for weakness, but her eyes held a calm that none of them could quite read. They had no idea what the symbol meant. The dagger and wings were no random design. It was the insignia of the Special Air Service, Britain's most elite unit. Legends like Andy McNabb and John McAleese had carried it into battle long before her. Emily's tattoo wasn't decoration. It was history carved into her skin, a mark of the warriors who had trained her, men who had taught her how to survive when survival seemed impossible. The operation began under cover of darkness. The SEALs moved like shadows through the barren landscape, their boots whispering against the sand. Emily took her position near the middle of the formation, rifle in hand, scanning every rooftop, every glint of movement in the night. Halfway to the compound, everything went wrong. The sound of a single shot cracked the silence, followed by a wave of automatic gunfire. Tracers lit up the sky as the squad dove for cover. The enemy had been waiting. A perfect ambush. Bullets whipped past, shattering stone walls around them. The SEALs scrambled, shouting over radios, the formation breaking under the storm of fire. Emily pressed her body against the ground, eyes narrowing as she scanned the chaos. The ambush wasn't sloppy. It was coordinated, relentless. Whoever planned it knew exactly how to trap them. "Pinned down!" one SEAL shouted into comms. "We can't move!" Another voice strained with panic. "We need air support now!" But air support was minutes away. Minutes they didn't have. Emily made her choice. Crawling low, she moved toward the flank, her Heckler & Koch HK-4116 gripped tight against her chest. She spotted movement along the rooftops, enemy fighters shifting position to cut off their escape. She exhaled, steadied her aim, and squeezed the trigger. One fell, then another. Her shots were precise, controlled, the kind of rhythm born from endless hours of SAS training. The SEALs turned, surprised to see where the cover fire was coming from. Emily wasn't panicking, wasn't firing blindly. She was dismantling the ambush piece by piece, every bullet buying the team more time. "Who taught her to shoot like that?" one of them muttered, disbelief breaking through the chaos. The firefight dragged on, each second heavier than the last. Explosions shook the earth as RPGs tore through the night. The squad was trapped in the open, and morale was fading fast. Then Emily's voice cut through the comms, sharp and steady. "Shift left, 30 meters. I'll cover you. Move!" Something in her tone carried authority, the kind that made men obey without question. The squad listened. Under her cover fire, they darted across the open ground, regrouping behind a crumbling wall. She joined them moments later, sweat streaking her face, her tattoo glistening in the moonlight where her sleeve had torn. The commander of the mission glanced at her, eyes narrowing. For the first time, he wasn't looking at her like a liability. He was watching her like a soldier who had just saved them. But the fight wasn't over. The enemy was regrouping, circling, preparing for a final push. Ammunition was running low. The SEALs exchanged tense glances, the weight of doubt heavy on their shoulders. Emily's hand brushed her tattoo as she reloaded. Memories flashed. Long nights in the damp woods of Hereford, training with men who never flinched, never surrendered. The SAS had taught her one lesson above all others: who dares wins. And tonight, daring was the only way out. She leaned in close to the squad, her voice low but firm. "We don't wait for them. We break through now." The SEALs hesitated. It sounded reckless, suicidal even. But the steadiness in her eyes, the certainty in her tone, broke through their fear. They nodded. The final push came like thunder. The SEALs rose from cover, firing as they advanced. Emily led the charge, her HK-416 spitting fire into the night. She moved with a deadly calm. Every step calculated, every shot true. Grenades exploded ahead, throwing dust and flame into the air. Enemies fell, one after another, until the ambush line cracked under the pressure. By the time the last shots faded, the compound lay ahead of them, silent and broken. The squad had survived, bloodied but alive. They had broken free because one soldier refused to break down. Back at base, silence hung heavy in the debriefing room. The SEALs who had mocked Emily's tattoo now sat with their heads bowed, the weight of what they had seen pressing down on them. The commander entered, his boots echoing on the floor, his eyes scanning the room before locking onto her. Her sleeve had ridden up again, the dagger and wings visible for all to see. The commander froze, recognition flickering in his gaze. He knew that symbol. He knew what it meant. Slowly, deliberately, he raised his hand and saluted. The room went still. Every SEAL turned to look at Emily. No one laughed now. No one whispered. They all understood. The mark they mocked was not ink for decoration. It was a legacy of the SAS, one of the deadliest and most respected warrior brotherhoods in history. She had carried their spirit into the fight and had brought them all back alive. The commanders. Salute lingered, and one by one the others followed, standing in silent respect. The same tattoo that had sparked ridicule now commanded reverence. Emily didn't smile, didn't gloat. She simply returned the salute, her eyes calm, her promise to the warriors before her fulfilled. From that day forward, no one doubted her. Again. And whenever the SEALs looked at the mark on her arm, they didn't see something to laugh at. They saw survival. They saw courage. They saw the forgotten warrior's mark, carried by the woman who had saved their lives in the night. Corporal Rachel Donovan kept to herself. Among the ranks of the Navy SEALs, where every man seemed larger than life, and voices filled with bravado echoed through the barracks, she was the quiet one. She didn't brag about her skills, didn't laugh loudly with the others, didn't even answer back when they teased her. And they teased her often. The reason was etched on her arm. A tattoo, small but striking, a skull with a dagger through it. Some called it wannabe ink. Others joked she got it after watching too many action movies. To them, she was just a rookie trying to look tough. They didn't know the truth because Rachel never told them. That mark wasn't for show. It wasn't random. It was her brother's. Lieutenant Michael Murphy, the Medal of Honor recipient who gave his life during Operation Red Wings, had carried that very same insignia. When he died, Rachel inked it onto her arm. Not as decoration, but as a vow to carry forward his courage. But she never said that out loud. She let them laugh. She let them mock. She endured in silence, knowing that the battlefield would one day speak louder than any words she could ever say. The chance came sooner than anyone expected. The team was deployed into hostile territory, a rescue mission deep inside Iraq. Intelligence had confirmed that an American hostage was being held by insurgents in a small fortified town. The SEALs were tasked with extraction, and though danger was expected, no one could predict the scale of what awaited them. The night was thick with smoke from distant fires as the team moved in, rifles tight against their chests. Rachel kept near the back, her eyes sharp, every sense on high alert. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with the steady rhythm of focus her brother had taught her. Calm is power. They breached the edge of the town, shadows darting between, stone walls. For a moment it was quiet. Then all at once the silence shattered. Gunfire erupted from rooftops, alleys, windows. The team was surrounded, bullets tearing through the night like lightning. "Ambush!" someone shouted. The SEALs scrambled for cover, ducking behind broken walls, returning fire blindly into the chaos. Radios crackled, voices urgent, but the enemy was everywhere, their numbers far greater than expected. The mission had gone sideways in seconds. Rachel pressed her back against a crumbling wall, gripping her M249 saw, the squad automatic weapon heavy but steady in her hands. She could hear the panic in the others' voices, the realization creeping in that they might not make it out alive. One of the SEALs, pinned under fire, shouted, "We're trapped! No way out!" Rachel's eyes narrowed. She didn't speak. She didn't waste breath on fear. Instead, she swung the saw into position and opened fire. The weapon roared, spitting a storm of rounds that ripped through the night. Enemies who had the squad locked down dropped one after another as Rachel laid down relentless cover fire. The sheer force of her barrage stunned the SEALs around her. This wasn't the quiet rookie they thought they knew. This was a soldier transformed. "Move!" she shouted over the gunfire, her voice sharp, commanding. "Get him out of there!" The squad obeyed instinctively. Under her cover, 2 SEALs rushed forward, dragging a wounded comrade back to safety. Rachel didn't flinch, didn't falter, even as bullets cracked inches from her head. She fired in sweeping arcs, holding the enemy at bay with an unyielding wall of lead. But the insurgents weren't giving up. They regrouped, circling tighter, determined to crush the trapped team. Explosions lit the night as grenades rained down. Dust and smoke filled the air, choking every breath. The SEALs were exhausted, their ammo running low, morale slipping. Rachel's grip tightened on the saw. Her brother's voice echoed in her mind. Never quit, never back down, never leave your team behind. She thought of his last moments, the way he had sacrificed himself to call for help, saving others while knowing he would not survive. That same blood ran through her veins. She rose from cover, advancing into the storm of fire. The SEALs shouted after her, but Rachel didn't stop. Every step forward was fueled by something deeper than duty. It was legacy, it was love, it was the silent vow she carried inked into her skin. Enemies tried to cut her down, but her aim was unshakable. She swept the rooftops clean, forced snipers into retreat, and carved a path through the chaos. The SEALs, galvanized by her fearlessness, rallied behind her. Together they pushed forward, breaking the stranglehold of the ambush. At the heart of the fight, Rachel spotted the hostage tied inside a guarded building. Without hesitation, she charged through the gunfire, bullets sparking off the walls around her. She burst through the doorway, her saw thundering, dropping every insurgent in her path. In seconds, the hostage was freed, dragged to safety under her protection. By the time the dust settled, the town was silent. Bodies littered the ground, smoke curling into the night sky. The SEALs stood in stunned quiet, staring at the woman they once mocked. Her face was streaked with dirt, her arms trembling with exhaustion, but her eyes burned with the fire of a warrior who had faced death and refused to fall. They made it back to base alive, because of her. The next morning, the squad assembled for debrief. The air was thick with something unspoken, every man aware of what Rachel had done but unsure of how to say it. She stood at attention, her uniform torn, her tattoo visible where the sleeve had ripped. The commander entered the room, his eyes scanning the team before stopping on her. For a long moment he said nothing. Then his gaze dropped to her tattoo, the skull and dagger etched into her skin. Recognition flickered in his eyes. He knew. He knew whose mark that was. He knew the blood she carried. Slowly, with deliberate respect, the commander raised his hand and saluted. The room went still. Every SEAL froze, their breath caught in their throats. One by one they straightened, their mocking long gone, their expressions solemn. They understood now. The silent woman they had dismissed was the sister of a fallen hero, and she had just proven she carried the same courage that once made her brother immortal. Rachel didn't smile. She didn't explain. She simply returned the salute, her eyes steady, her silence louder than any words she could have spoken. From that day forward, no one mocked the tattoo. No one doubted her again. For the SEALs, it became a reminder that bravery comes in many forms, sometimes in loud defiance, sometimes in quiet resilience, and sometimes in the silent daughter who carried a hero's spirit into battle and saved them all.